and choose split container 1. As I mentioned, it's pretty much every split container contains two panels, panel 1 and panel 2, and you can see there's a property down here for panel 1 and panel 2. And you can actually collapse these panels too so they don't even exist. You can see that I double-clicked on it, turned it to true, so panel 1 is collapsed right now, so that's a good way. You can hide panels if you want, and especially in a scenario like this where the tab in our other panel will then completely take up the space. So we'll turn that back to false there, so it's expanded. You can also set the minimum sizes here, but what's really neat is if you expand this panel, look at that, it's an actual panel itself. Just as we have over in our layout controls. It's just like this. Pretty much the exact same thing. It contains the same exact properties because that's what it is. It's an actual panel. So that's how it works. That's what I want to show you. What's unique about it is you have panel 1 and panel 2, full access to the panel itself and all of its properties, and then of course just general properties relating to the split container itself. So a very simple and effective control to get the hang of. You can again build some pretty complex user interfaces very easily using this control. The other one we have here is the tab page, or tab control I should say. And the tab control is just another excellent way to make use of when you have a little bit of real estate to deal with, such as this. If you're working in a tight, small area here, it's a great way to divide up a form into, pretty much making as much real estate as you want here. Because basically what we have is tab pages. And if we right-click or just click on the Smart tag here on the tab control, you can see we can choose Add Tab or Move Tab. You can also access this by going into the Property window and down to the Tab Pages collection here and hit the Build button. That'll open up the Tab Page Collection Editor here. And you can add tabs as many as you want here. You can see we'll add a couple, maybe a little too many. If we had 4 there and hit OK, now it's going to add these tabs up here. If you got more than can fit on the screen, it'll just add these little arrows up here so you can navigate through them. Now, if we click in this area within here, the work area, it's actually going to highlight the current tab that is highlighted. You see that? So if we click on tab page 2 and click on here, it's actually going to give us all the properties for that page itself. So all these tab pages have their own set of properties. If you want to get the properties for the control itself, you can click up here one time. You can see it'll turn it to the tab control itself. So this, now we're relating to the entire tab control, and it's got its own set of properties. And probably the one of the more popular ones you'll see here, all the other ones are pretty standard, is going to be the appearance. You can turn these to buttons, as you can see up here. Now they'll give us the button appearance. You can even do flat buttons, so they'll have that kind of that toolbar look and feel. Or of course, being normal, they'll just look like standard tab pages. And that's really about it as far as the tab control itself goes. Again, most of the time you'll be working with this tab pages collection and working with all the tab pages in here again because they also support their own properties. And some of the common ones you'll want to set in here, maybe border style if you want the 3D border on the inside here of the tab page. Text obviously is going to be a big one because that's going to set the actual name of the tab. And another popular one are images. You can create an image list, put images in there, and then tie this tab control to that image list and then pick your image out of here, and that'll tie an image to a tab. So each tab page can have its own image, and that's very handy. But I tell you, this is actually one of my personal favorite controls. I use this in almost every application I work with simply because it's so valuable to create real estate when you don't have a lot to work with. So just a great control to work with. I definitely advise getting the hang of it. You can also work with these tab pages dynamically. You can add them in code, remove them in code, hide them in code, things of that nature. So just a wonderful control all around. And just to give you an idea what this looks like here, let's go ahead and go into my project and change our startup form here to be our tab split controls form. We'll go ahead and save it, close out of our property pages, and hit the run button. And you can see with very little effort, we've already created a fairly complex user interface that already automatically sizes. Look at that, isn't that slick? So now we can do this. We can, if we were a user here, we could size this any which way we wanted to. And it looks great. And of course, that's where the min size comes into play. You can see it's set at 25, meaning I can't go any more that way to the left with it. Or this one, I couldn't go any more down to the border with it. So that is the tab control and the split container control. Again, I advise getting the hang of those because those are just very powerful controls within your skill set that you could use to build great user interfaces with. Now, a couple little tips and tricks I want to show you in working with container controls. Let me go ahead and close out of this form. Let's go back to our layout controls form here. Let's say that we need to loop through and maybe disable a couple of controls within this area. Now, of course, you'd say the easy way to do that is just reference the control by name and disable it. And yeah, sure, that is the easy way. But what if you have lots of controls and you want your code to be efficient, clean, you want it to look good, and be easily readable and maintainable, manageable, that sort of thing? Well, one way to do it is we can loop through what's called the control collection. As I mentioned earlier, the container control that hosts these controls has a collection in it. And a collection allows us to basically iterate through this collection and kind of query it to see what type of control it is, and then maybe do an action on it. For instance, let's say we wanted to, again, disable all these controls, or disable only the checkbox controls, or maybe reset the controls, or maybe we're doing validation. And we want to just take all the controls that are empty and turn their back colors to red so the user knows that they have to fill them in, the required fills or whatnot. So how we can do this again is use this by accessing the controls collection. Let me do this. Let me take this button here, and let's just go ahead and name this button, how about reset? We're going to turn all these back to their default values, we'll say. So we'll hit reset there. Call that reset. We'll call this btn reset. All right. And now what we're going to do is we're going to put some code behind this. So let's go ahead and go into here. And here's how this works. We're going to do a for each loop. So we're going to say for each CTL, meaning control, as a control. And this is kind of a shortcut. I'll tell you what this is all about shortly. And we're looking at inside of our flow layout panel there. So we're going to say in me.flowlayoutpanel.controls. All right. So this is a major shortcut in coding because a lot of people do this actually. What they do is they'll say dimctl as control, right? And then they'll say for each CTL in me.flowlayoutpanel1.controls. You can shorten that up just by adding an as and then the type here, right? So that's a nice little shortcut there. I like to throw that out there to show people because it makes your code, the less code you write, the easier it is to read, right? So we'll do that, right? So now we're going to loop through each control within the controls collection of the flow layout panel. The next thing we need to do is find out what type of control we're working with. So we can write an if statement here. We can say if, and we use the type of keyword, CTL is, and we'll start with our checkboxes. So if the type of control is a checkbox, then what we can do here is just say, and if we can do this, we can do CTL.checked equals false to reset it. We'll say, that's our default value. And you can see right off the bat here, this isn't working. And the reason it is because the control by itself doesn't support the checked property, right? So what we need to do here is something like this. We need to actually say, how about dimchk as checkbox equals ctype, meaning convert. We're converting the control object that we have here to a checkbox. And now we'll just have to turn this to chk. And there we go. So we're basically making our own checkbox in code here by turning the control into a checkbox. So we're making a copy of it, storing it in this variable, and now we can work with it because we have a reference to the actual control itself. And then we'll do the same thing for every type of control in here. So I'm just going to go ahead and copy this code here, highlight it, Control-C, Control-V. And now what we're going to do is turn this into, how about a radio button? There we go. And now this needs to be, how about we'll just call it RB here as a radio button. And then we're going to convert this control, standard control object, into a radio button. And now we just need to say RB.checked equals false. So we're resetting that one as well. And then we also have a text box control. We won't worry about the label in this case because you can't really do much with the label anyway. So we're just going to go ahead and do that to the text box. Pretty much the same thing. And I'll type this one out so you can see it again. So we'll say if type of CTL is a text box. Oop, not type of. Type of. If type of CTL is a text box, then what we're going to do is we're going to make a new text box object here. We'll call it TB as a text box. And it's going to create itself by converting the control object into a text box. And we know this is a safe conversion because we've already checked using the type of operator here, object, that it's an actual text box. So now we can just do tb.text equals nothing. Right? Or you can also do, this is actually the technically best way to do it these days, is string.empty. There we go. So now we loop through so for every control, when we click this button, it's going to loop through every control. If we come across a label, guess what? It's not in any of our checks here, so it's going to completely ignore it. But if it's a checkbox, it's going to reset it, its check property to false, radio button to false, and it's going to empty the text box. So let's see how this works. Let's save our code here. Let's go back into my project, and we'll go ahead and turn our startup form to our layout controls form, save it, and hit the run button here. There we go. So this opens it up. Let's go ahead and put some checks in here. We'll turn one of these radio buttons on again. Since we're in a flow control panel here, flow layout panel, we can only choose one at a time. And let's put some text in here. How about some text? And if we hit reset, look at that. So our loop worked. It went through, checked all the types of controls, created a copy of it by converting it into that type of control, and that allowed us to work with it in code and set its control-specific properties the way we wanted to. And you can see that wasn't very much code at all, and it's very clean, very easy to read, and just not a lot to it. So this is what makes container controls powerful, is that we can loop through the control collection and still work with these types of controls dynamically as well, because we're not really working with individual controls, we're working with all of them at the same time. Now the last thing I want to show you here is how to add controls dynamically at runtime, how to create controls in code and add them to their container. Now as I mentioned earlier, doing this on the panel would be a little more difficult because we'd have to worry about positioning and getting the controls, because if we just added them dynamically, they would all go on top of each other. So again, you'd have to do a lot of math here to figure out where they go and how they fit within the panel. And but doing it in a flow panel is very easy. So I'm going to show you pretty much how it looks in the panel, and then we'll put it into the flow panel. And it doesn't take a lot of code to create your own controls dynamically. So let me do this. Let me go back up into our form load event. We're going to add it up here. Let's say we wanted to add a label. Well, we can do dim LBL as a new label here, right? And then we can say LBL.caption, or excuse me, text, not like the old days, equals runtime label, right? Just like that. There we go. We have a label created. How easy is that? How about a text box? Dim TV as new text box. How about TV.text equals runtime text box. There we go. Simple as that. Now, the trick here to actually add them to the container is doing this. You need to specify your container object, right? And then the controls object here, property, dot add. You can see you have all these methods to add. So you can add, clear, you can add a range if you want to add a bunch of controls, and then you can also remove as well. Right? So we can do controls dot add, and then we're just going to pass in the control. So the first one we're going to add is the label here. The second one we're going to add is going to be the text box. There we go. That's all there is to it. This is how you dynamically create controls and add them to its container's control collection. Simple as that. So let's go ahead and hit run here. And you can see we're adding these to the panel. So guess what? We already have these controls on here. Well, they're back there. They're just behind these other controls because they got added after the fact. Anything you add on using the designer and by hand dragging them from the toolbox are technically added first, so they become on top. So if you add anything on, in code, it's going to go behind it, and you can mess with that. There's actually a property that you can mess with to control, sending controls forward and backward and such. But in this case, my point here is that the panel is a little more difficult to work with in this sense if you're going to add controls dynamically to it, because you do have to worry about positioning. We'd have to actually take the location property, figure out where these locations are, and then put it based on these controls so they don't interfere with them. But if we were to close out of this and go back into our code and change this panel 1 to the flow layout panel, alright, and using what we learned earlier, we'll add a flow break after the last button that's on there, our reset button. So we'll just copy this code, we'll call this btn reset. Now we add another break after that, so these controls will go after our reset button. And now we hit run. Look at that. They line up. And of course we'd have to take the auto sizing off our label again, so these will line up perfectly. But you get the point. Much easier to work with flow layout panels and adding controls dynamically because all the positioning is taken care of it by the .NET framework. Alright, so in this CBT Nugget, we took a big look at managing control layout. We started off with just a brief overview of the different container controls out there and how container controls host other controls. They have control collection. And then we also just briefly mentioned all the different container controls in the .NET 2.0 framework. Then we jumped in here and took a big look at all the container controls. We started off with the group box, and we saw how to scale by using the anchor property and a little bit on the docking property in the beginning as well there to see how we can pretty much automatically size the controls within our form when the user resizes it, so we can create scalable, sizable forms. After that, again, we took a look at all the different container controls. We looked at the panel control. We looked at the flow layout control, which is a great way to have the user interface dynamically and automatically position our controls for us. And then we took a look at the table layout control, another brand new control in .NET Framework that works just like the flow layout panel, only it allows us to work with rows, columns, and cells to really, curtail the design the way we want it to. And then we took a look here at two very powerful controls that I personally really enjoy working with, which is the split container control and the tab control. A couple of excellent controls for creating powerful user interfaces and expanding that real estate when we don't have a lot to work with. And then at the end here, I showed you some tips and tricks here with working with the control collection on these container controls, looping through the control collection and performing actions on them. And at the end here, I also showed you how to work with and add controls dynamically. I hope this has been informative for you, and I thank you for viewing.